Zhang approached the boss's corpse and stared at it intently, unable to believe he had finally defeated it. At that moment, a system window appeared, congratulating him for leveling up. He was now level 14, with a power evaluation of 127 stars. The passive abilities and level up effects were still in effect. Zhang clenched his fist, and it began to glow. He lowered his head slightly, smiling as he thought about how his strength had increased. With 127 stars, his combat power was almost equivalent to that of a level 25 professional in the combat class. He turned his head and realized that all he had to do now was devour the monster corpses and gain devouring points. Seeing how powerful Zhang was, and sensing the strength of the mother insect, the small spiders began to flee. They were intelligent creatures and knew they had no chance against him. Upon seeing them escape, Zhang thought that there was no longer any threat. He soon realized that the spiders had understood the situation and were fleeing. Although he wanted to kill them for points, he decided against it, as the most important thing now was to start breeding insects. Zhang began walking toward the monster corpses, and slowly, Little Nine started to manifest through the poisonous mist. With a killer look, Zhang stared at the boss's corpse, clenched his fist tightly, and extended his other hand toward the sky, telling Little Nine that it now belonged to her. She thanked him and returned to her natural form before leaping toward the boss's corpse to devour it. A system window appeared, granting him 600 devouring points. As Little Nine enjoyed her meal, Zhang turned his body to the side and thought about how elite monsters like the boss were different. They provided a much higher devouring value. It didn't take long for him to conclude that hunting and breeding insects was a good way to become stronger and hunt more elite monsters. Moments later, another system window appeared, informing him that the devouring value was full. The system asked if he wanted to start the insect breeding process. Zhang was amazed at how quickly the devouring value had filled up and realized that elite monsters gave far more points than normal monsters. A few seconds later, Little Nine returned to her human form, knelt before him, and asked if she could continue following him with much stronger power. Zhang, his body emanating a powerful aura, paused for several seconds, lost in thought. He then smiled and decided it was time to start breeding the insects. At that moment, a system window appeared, informing him that Little Nine had started the first generation of mass insect breeding. Both Zhang's and Little Nine's bodies emitted a wave of energy, and the system informed him that the accelerated growth of talents and the blessing of growth for all things were in effect. Zhang gazed at Little Nine, realizing that his passive skills were very effective at accelerating insect breeding. Several seconds later, a mark appeared on his hand. Upon seeing this, he realized it was a new ability. His assumption was correct when the system granted him two new exclusive abilities, Insect Nest and Dominion. Another system window appeared to inform him that the insect breeding had been accelerated and there were only 8 seconds left. Zhang looked up to the sky and was shocked by what he saw. Little Nine was standing in front of him, hands extended to the sides, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of insects appeared, flying around them. The system congratulated him for successfully completing the breeding of the first swarm, totaling 2,300 insects. Zhang smiled, impressed by the quantity. He couldn't believe the first breeding cycle had produced over 2,000 offspring. This was only the first generation, and he wondered what would happen in future generations. One of the insects approached him, and sensing its presence, he caressed its head. He liked the insects, but their abilities were different from Little Nine's. He noticed that the insects had gained new skills, including poisonous mist, which corroded and devoured everything it touched, camouflage, which allowed them to blend using the reflection of their wings, frenzy, which increased strength and speed by temporarily consuming devouring points, and self-destruction, which let the insect explode, releasing toxins and causing massive damage. Zhang thought the camouflage and self-destruction abilities were quite useful. While he was lost in thought, Little Nine approached from behind, giving him a hug. She smiled and caught his attention. Zhang smiled back and, feeling at ease, turned to her and caressed her head. She seemed to have changed, but not much. Little Nine closed her eyes, placed her hands on her chest, and smiled as she informed him that she had finished breeding the insects. She then took Zhang's arm with both hands and told him she wanted to rest. Curious, Zhang asked what she meant by resting. At that moment, her body began to disappear. Zhang was confused as he turned his head toward his hand and wondered where she had gone. A system window then appeared, informing him that Little Nine had returned to the insect nest. Zhang smiled, feeling relieved. The system space was incredible and could accommodate swarms of insects. It didn't matter how many swarms there were, they could all hide within the system, meaning Zhang no longer had to worry about being discovered. The insect nest was a new ability he had acquired, granted at maximum level, which meant it couldn't be leveled up. Zhang activated Little Nine's mark, looking at his hand and seeing that she was sleeping peacefully. He realized that after reproduction, insects needed to sleep. He remembered he had also acquired a new ability called Dominion and decided to test it. He extended his hand to the side and activated the skill. His body emitted a powerful, suffocating energy, and his eyes shone. As he activated Dominion, the insects around him turned their heads toward him, gazing at him with a murderous look. Zhang turned his head toward them and, realizing how the ability worked, extended his hand toward the sky. The insects began to gather. This ability allowed Zhang to control the swarm, making it as easy as moving an arm. Using this skill, Zhang could also perceive the world through the insect's senses. Looking around, he could see that the area was filled with hidden monsters, ready to attack. Zhang smiled, realizing that his insects were just as excited. With a killer look, he ordered the swarm to attack, testing their new abilities. Thousands of insects destroyed a nearby building to attract the attention of all nearby monsters. The plan worked, and the monsters started approaching. Zhang didn't wait and began moving toward them, releasing Little Nine's poisonous mist. The monsters realized what was happening and tried to escape, but it was too late. The poisonous mist rapidly reached them and started corroding their bodies, causing immense pain. Soon, all the affected monsters perished and fell to the ground. With the monsters dead, the poisonous mist began devouring them. Zhang approached the corpses and observed them intently as the swarm took over. The reach of the poisonous mist had grown larger, and it devoured its targets faster and more extensively. With his ability to share vision through Dominion, Zhang could now see everything the insects saw. Common monsters could no longer hide from the swarm. Watching Little Nine's poisonous mist devour the monster corpses, Zhang smiled, realizing he would soon be able to breed more insects. He remembered he hadn't checked how much devouring value was needed for the next breeding cycle. Opening the system window, Zhang was shocked by the information that appeared. Wondering what was happening, he prepared for the next part of his journey. This was the end of the video. If you want to see the next part, don't forget to subscribe and like the video.